Wisdom with Scott Allen.
Hello, I am your host, Scott Allen, and this is Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. If the topic is leadership, I'm in. I've spent more than 20 years in the field teaching, learning, writing, and questioning. When I'm not working on Phronesis, I travel, delivering keynotes, working with individuals and teams, and helping people from organizations across industries become better leaders. Want to learn more? Visit me at scottjallen.net. Phronesis offers a smart, fast-paced discussion about all things leadership. We explore relevant topics and incorporate practical tips to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. Listen Notes lists Phronesis in the top 3% of podcasts worldwide. Phronesis is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. ILA brings together those who teach, study, and develop leadership, advancing leadership knowledge and practice for a better world. Learn more at ila-net.org. Finally, if you enjoy Phronesis, please subscribe to stay current on our weekly episodes. If you find an episode that resonates, please share it with your colleagues and friends. And if you want more content, subscribe to my newsletter, The Leader's Edge. The link is in the show notes. As always, thanks for listening. And now, here's today's show. Okay, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for checking in wherever you are in the world. Special guest today, Marshall Ganz, senior lecturer in public policy at Harvard Kennedy School and one of the leading thinkers on leadership as collective action. So many of you are very familiar with his work. The full bio is in the show notes. Marshall, thank you so much for being with me today. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for the invitation, Scott. Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
So, being human, tell me about this course that you are now teaching at the Kennedy School. And I'm so excited. And really, I want to take this conversation future forward. There's a lot of links to your work in the show notes for listeners. But I'm so excited just to hear about what you're thinking about right now.
Sometimes you have been doing something for a long time, and then you realize, oh, that's what I've been doing. Now, for me, a key discovery was about the work I was doing as an organizer and as an educator about leadership. And it took me a while to wake up and say, oh, you know what I've been doing? I've been doing Hillel's 3 questions. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm for myself alone, what am I? If not now, when? The relationship between self and other and action. Now, I'd been doing it for a long time before I realized, oh, that's really what I've been up to here. And it becomes very clarifying. Now, having done a lot of work in that domain, about 3 years ago, a colleague and I, who's a philosopher, who's also a gamer, were having lunch and complaining about the state of dehumanization. So we said, okay, what if we did a class called Being Human? Well, that sounds cool. All right. So that's what we did. And we did a co-curricular. We had 20 students. Then we did for credit, and we had 40. And this year we had 90. And what we realized was we tapped into something really fundamental. And for me, it's tapping into, in many ways, what's been also deeper underneath the work I've been doing my whole life, which is about what it is to value ourselves and others as human beings. And in a sense, all this work around organizing and public narrative, it's all about, let me put it this way. My mother was a teacher, but she called herself an educator because it comes from the Latin educere, which means to draw out, not to put in. And so it meant that it was for me, it's always been much more about it's been a developmental way of working with people, because it's not, oh, here's a vacuum I need to fill. It's much more, here's a person with potential, capability. And so how do I facilitate their growth and development? And so that was central to my organizing work when I learned in the South, central to my teaching. And so then I realized, oh, It's really about being human. It's really about the value, and that being human is not a solo operation. It's in relationship with others, like Hillel. In other words, to be human is to also be in relationship. And it is to grow and to learn and to connect. And I don't know, it's been a cool discovery. And so then we began, this is all in real time, but then we began crafting, how are we going to do this?
That's a big question.
yeah. So we came up with an approach that we teach this it's 10 days over 2 weeks. It's a J-term class. In other words, in January, it's 4 hours a day for 10 days.
Okay.
But what we came up with was a way to, first of all, just enable people to see each other. The first class is each student shares their name, what they do, where they call home, what their parents did or do, an experience that motivated them to come to this class, and what they understand human to be.
Wow.
And so we had 90 voices. So it was like 90 seconds per person. But it's the opposite of boring. It just became fascinating.
Wow.
And it got the highest rating of any class because they were experiencing being seen.
Yes.
You don't experience that here. And being seen and allowing others to allow you to see them. Whoa, wait a second here. This is something different. And so that was just our first day. It was that. And then we go into a period we call the human animal. And this is about our development as physical, biological, but it winds up being about consciousness and about coming to consciousness. And that consciousness is not the result of increasing intellect. It's a result of life. In other words, that consciousness is an evolutionary development that's associated with being a living being in the world, which is full of uncertainty, full of unpredictability, but this awareness of self, the awareness of other, and all that, it's important to understand how we got here. And Antonio Damasio does terrific work on this. His newest book on feeling, it's being, feeling, and knowing, how we move from amoebas to us, sensing creatures, to feeling creatures, to knowing creatures. And that is important because in a place like this, there's no feeling and sensing. What there is just knowing. And that's such a reductionist idea of what the real world is.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like substituting a thermometer for heat, confusing a thermometer with heat. Oh, we have this conceptual stuff. Gee, that's the real thing. No, that's what's real is heat. And we're arguing then about these abstractions that essentially have no meaning because they're simply abstractions. No real meaning. So it brings you back to the significance of lived experience with one another. We have a game that Chris suggests. It's called the mind game. Our students, first of all, they're organized in what we call learning teams.
Okay.
We design these teams for maximum diversity, and their purpose is to facilitate each other's learning. They're not there to be the great star. They're there to facilitate each other's learning. Turns out to be then all the learning is relational. And then people become present, not as each other's judges, but as each other's teachers. So it creates a very different kind of experience. And a lot of it is experiential. Everybody gets back cards, get a card face down, look and see what your card is. Now, the job of your team, 5 or 6 people, is to figure out how to display the cards in sequence from low to high. But you cannot speak and you cannot gesture. Interesting.
Yeah.
At first, everybody failed. But then they start learning. And they start paying attention to the presence of each other in ways that we just normally don't focus on or don't do, but are there. And they learn. They started to do this. In Japan, they have an expression, learning to read a person's air. And what results is they're paying attention to each other in ways they never would otherwise.
Yes.
And as a team, and not just as individuals, they come out, the bonding that occurs through this half hour is really powerful because they're really paying attention to each other, and not just with the head, with the heart, with the body, with the feelings. And so the human animal part is about that development, how we go from being amoebas to being conscious beings. And we bring in like Arrival, the movie Arrival.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Language constitutes meaning. And there's a book we sometimes use called The Mountain and the Sea. It's about when octopus achieve consciousness. So it's very rich. So then we move from the human animal to the cultural human.
Okay.
And so the cultural human, this is the world we create, not that we have been created. In other words, it's a world we've created and continue to create and are created by. And so that's storytelling.
Okay.
That's music. That's visual arts. That's dance. That's all of the dimensions of what we call the arts, but which have been ways in which we learn to construct a world with others. And that has been a real revelation, I think, for everybody.
Wow.
With stories, it's a little more familiar because it is a form of emotional communication about how we can confront disruption with hope or fear with hope. But music. Now, this year we were blessed with Yo-Yo Ma came for an hour. And so he's a wonderful teacher. And so then we discovered, we had cellists and violin. We had all these musicians in the class that nobody would have ever spoken of or mentioned. And so now, and then I don't know if you remember when they sent the Voyager out in space.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The golden disc.
Exactly. The record.
A third of which was Bach.
Mm.
We had our students share a song that made them, when they experienced it, as being human.
Wow.
And so we got songs from all over the world, and that became our playlist for the class. And so people listen differently because they say, oh, this is somebody's expression of feeling human.
Wow.
And then the visual arts, this slow looking, they call it, interacting with a visual representation emotionally, not just, what's the perspective and all that. And then dance, we had, and it's not like now we're going to learn tango. It's like you have a partner. Okay, follow your partner's moves. And it winds up being all about how we communicate with our bodies. And then when we move to dehumanization, the assignment is that they have to do a piece of art that can communicate to others how they felt when they felt dehumanized.
Wow.
And the next morning we had a gallery of images, constructions, pictures, all these ways of communicating that they couldn't do through words, that they did much more effectively in this way.
That had to have been incredibly powerful.
It was incredibly powerful. And as you can see from my enthusiasm, sustained discovery.
Yeah.
Sustained discovery. And for all of us, for me and Chris and for everybody.
Yeah.
And then we go to dehumanization. And that's both interpersonal and systemic. Everything from, there's making monsters. It's like the creation of the subordinate, which is also alien. That's one kind. The other kind is just turning people into objects. And that's the dominant. That's all over the place now. And so we looked at modern times, Charlie Chaplin's movie from 1936, because we're looking at it both individually and collectively. And they experience it all the time in their classes. If they're physicians, they experience all the time in healthcare this systemic effort to reduce humans to objects or to symbols of humans. And it's everywhere. And then we go to rehumanization. And that's how do we recover this sense of humanity
Wow.
personally and systemically.
Yes.
And Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast, terrific for that.
Powerful read. Powerful read.
Now, all the way through, each morning, they're writing short pieces of reflection on the reading preparing for that day, but it's shared and they can comment on each other. And so they develop this other conversation, a reflective conversation on what they're experiencing. I'm going into the weeds there, but boy, it's a different kind of experience.
Yeah.
And at the Div School now they have their weekly humans lunch. So if you're a human, you come and have this. Or no, it's funny because it becomes a real experience in reclamation of value. And so we want to share that. We want to figure out how to grow that because it feels like a real discovery. And there's a book that our students really like by the German philosopher, sociologist Hartmut Rosa. And it's called The Uncontrollability of the World. And basically, he's arguing that the world is fundamentally uncontrollable in reality. And so then when we try to control, it's aggressive and it's inherently repressive. It's the thing we can't do. So he argues for resonance as a more meaningful way of understanding our interaction with each other and the world. And our students love this because everybody's in the control.
Yeah.
And you can't.
Something that I'm taking from this, and please push back if I'm not reading it correctly, but in some ways it's challenging the students to pause, slow down, be present,
That's right.
and be human.
Yeah. And be present to exactly.
Yes.
I'm having this new
A human being versus a human doing, and you know what I mean? Like,
right.
just...
And Tim, I don't know if I mentioned Tim Berners-Lee. Yeah, I think we mentioned.
Yes, yeah.
Because recognizing that AI is it's a calculating device. I have Claude, I have ChatGPT, I love working with them, but I know that they're not human. They are machines, and we are capable of so much more.
Yeah.
So we're busy ending humanities departments and turning everybody into as close as we can to AIs. Boy, talk about self-destructive.
Yeah.
We need to be cultivating, it's called humanities, cultivating that which makes us human.
I'm hearing aspects of being human, at least some things that I heard from you, a relationship with others, to grow, to learn, to connect, being seen. Are there other things that maybe because of the experience have emerged as critical elements of being human that come to mind for you through this experience?
I think one is you are human in relationship.
Yeah.
You are not human as an isolated entity. We're not born that way. We don't die that way. We don't love that way. That it's understanding our deep relationality and need for it. And then you look at people being transformed, not even people being transformed to digital images. There's another book we use called The Extinction of Experience. It's arguing that when two people are present to one another, there's all kinds of experience going. It's experiential. Now, once you reduce it to a phone call, now it all depends on sound. But sound can express emotion. Then reduce it to a piece of text. All of a sudden, it's not experience at all.
Yeah.
It's information about experience. But that is radically different from experience. That's the thermometer versus heat. And so it's trying to reclaim what it is to be present to one another and what presence means. And again, it's another way to try to put this digital universe that we're operating in to appreciate how dehumanizing it can be.
Yes.
Often is. And then we wonder about loneliness. And then we wonder about, come on, that's what our market system creates that. Our
Yes.
politics, unfortunately, create it the way it's done. And so it's come back to what you were saying earlier before about how do we build community with one another in ways that are real?
Yes.
And how do we create structures that facilitate rather than counter?
Yes.
It's not enough to have virtuous people. We have to have virtuous institutions.
Yes.
And we've eviscerated our political commonality here. Right? It's all advertising. It's all marketing. We're the only liberal democracy that has done that. We've created this electoral industrial complex that is a result of a Supreme Court decision in 1976, Buckley v. Valero, which said that money is speech. I studied with a guy named Sid Verba, who's an expert on electoral stuff. He said liberal democracy is an experiment to see if equality of voice can balance inequality of wealth, quality of resource. And when you make voice dependent on wealth as well,
Yes.
you undermine the whole project.
Yep.
And that's what's been going on since the 70s. You create this infinite demand, then you create an industry to feed that demand. And then guess what? It goes up every year, more, because everybody's making money off that. And the politics get more and more removed.
Yep.
Here at the Kennedy School, after the general election, they have a thing where the campaign management for both campaigns come together for a day and a half.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a day and a half in a room with the Trump people and the Harris people, and that was interesting. But one of the things that was so clear was the Harris campaign, they were trying to tell people how they ought to feel. They were not hearing, listening, seeing how people felt.
Yeah.
It's living in this digital world of abstract polls and all this stuff. And you're not in touch with people. That's where Zoran Mamdani's campaign is so refreshing because they so got it right. Such a contrast that I think it's really important for people to appreciate the lessons of that campaign.
It's just a breath of fresh air. This conversation, this course, it's almost as if you are a counterpoint to what we are living and experiencing. And it's an opportunity to slow down, again, be present, and just exist with other human beings in a way that I don't know we're being driven toward, right? You and I were talking a little bit about religion and its role as just a very important piece of humans connecting, humans reflecting, humans recentering into what's important to them. And I think I often wonder, and as I said to you, I don't exactly know what my faith is, and of course that has been abused. Yes. However,
it's human.
Yeah, humans being you've got
that's the other part
that are not acting well. Yes,
that's right.
Of attorneys, physicians, just go down the list of humans being. But by and large, you could say on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever day of the week it was, or whatever time of day it was, if you were praying, there's a moment of pause, reflection, presence, and recentering and reorienting. And as you said so beautifully before we started recording, there's an opportunity to be in community with others.
Yep.
And what is that? And so that structure, that system, what is that for us today? I'm reading the book Dopamine Nation, which is an incredible read for listeners if you have not heard of it. But yes, capitalism run amok. And of course, we've got gambling you can turn to, and pornography you can turn to, and alcohol and THC. And there's all of these things that in a capitalistic society are being heavily marketed and heavily placed upon the population. And that's our news as well. It's all about the dopamine and the agitation and the frustration and the anger, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry keeping us a little bit off kilter.
Oh boy, big off, but they're making a lot of money.
Exactly.
They think they're going to live forever.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
No, that's really the case. There's a Jewish story about the fact that we are each given a jacket, and in the jacket there are two pockets, and in each pocket there's a note. And in one pocket the note says, "For you the world was created." In the other pocket the note says, You are dust and ashes, and to dust you'll return. Now, question, how do you hold those two together? And that humility and transcendence. And that's what faith traditions work at. It's, yes, I have a limited existence here. I have an amazing gift of life. But it's that connection with both the genuine humility and a connection with that which is transcendent. And whether we call it God or whether we call it whatever we call it, it's a critical need that we have. And which in the absence of faith experiences, people say, I'm spiritual. I don't believe in religion. I'm spiritual. It's a yearning for this.
And I think to recenter us on relationships with others, growing, learning, connecting, being seen, right? How do we recenter? How do institutions, how do we as just in our communities, and truly be present? And I can just, as you told the story of your students telling the story of themselves, just imagine the embodied feelings that people had in that learning experience. They will, or as they are moving around the room and looking at these pieces of art, the embodied learning, regardless of your perspective on the world, your lived history, your orientation, it had to have been just such a powerful experience. And for you to be creating that learning experience in that space for exploration, because I think you use the word wonder, right?
Yeah.
We create a community where wonder exists. I think that's another incredible element of being human. Curiosity and wonder, advancement in that way.
Yeah, the world is a place of exploration, a place of experimentation, of learning. It's a serious place.
Yeah.
But it's also capable of joy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's because in teaching organizing and leadership, one of the core dimensions of it is a head, hands, heart approach. That there's concept, but there's feeling and there's a skill.
Yes.
And so we don't believe in models. We teach practices because models are abstractions that try to put people in boxes. My mom used to talk about Procrustes, the Greek pirate king. When he captured prisoners, they bring them back, and he had this plank. And if you were too short for the plank, you got stretched. And if you were too long for the plank, you got chopped. That's what we do with models.
Yep.
The economics profession for 70 years has been doing that, because then we say, that's reality. Now, this human lived experience over here, it's anecdotal or whatever, but it's not. It's trying to force reality into this conceptual box invented through a process of abstraction that does real damage. And so we teach practices, much more like Alistair McIntyre understands practice.
Yeah.
It's dynamic, it's ongoing, it involves values, it involves concepts, it involves skills, and it's never done. It's just never done. Change is never done. Change is with us. So unless learning is with us all the time too, then we lose the line, lose the thread, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So when we teach leadership, there's the head part, but learning to speak the language of emotion is critically important.
Yeah.
And that's what we do through narrative. And it's also got to translate into doing something.
Yes.
Because that creates the world. I don't know, as you can see, it's very exciting stuff. And we also find it works across cultures. We have students from all over the world. And when I was developing public narrative as part of the teaching I've been doing, public narrative in organizing, it starts with telling a story of self. But it's not a CV. It's what are the experiences in which you learn to care? What are the experiences in which you learn to hope? So it's experiential. It's like Charles Taylor, an effort to articulate moral sources, but experientially. And so it communicates emotionally. And that's a critical dimension of all this. And so the definition we use for leadership is that it's about accepting responsibility for enabling others to achieve shared purpose under conditions of uncertainty. And uncertainty is fundamental, which means we don't know what's going to happen, but it also means anything could happen.
Yes.
There's a sense of possible associated with that, not just the probable.
I hope you will come back and we can discuss public narrative, organizing versus mobilizing. We
Yes.
can talk about emotion. I hope that you will consider doing that because I have loved this conversation. So much fun. As we begin to wind down our time, what would you say is the practical wisdom for listeners?
I think part of it is to trust your own heart. You can't plan your way to something. It's more what moves you to engage with whatever you're engaging with. In other words, it's making a 30-year plan is useless. Somebody interviewed Eisenhower after D-Day, and, your plan must have been really important. He said, planning's important, but plans are useless. That is the reality, because the world it's uncertain, it's unpredictable. So rather than trying to control through prediction, it's rather trying to equip ourselves with the capabilities of engaging uncertainty creatively and with hopefulness and not fear. Now, we're all capable of that. Every faith tradition tries to address this question in one way or another. But it starts with trusting your own heart, I think.
Sir, a perfect way to end my week. Thankful for the work that you've done, that you continue to do, the exploration that you continue to engage in. It's admirable. And I do hope you will consider coming back. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for a chance to share about being human. We haven't shared that so much, but boy, it turns out to be the real fundamental of the whole thing. So thank you.
I love it. Okay. Be well, sir.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
You have just finished another episode of Practical Wisdom for Leaders with Scott Allen. To contact me, visit scottjallen.net or send me a note at scott@scottjallen.net. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. If you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And now here's my daughter, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.